mushroom cows, mushrooms, and the mushroom islands in Minecraft seem to be a somewhat useless part of the game. But this couldn't be further from the truth, and I'll show you why right now. So the first question is, how do you find the rare mushroom island biome? Well, they generate in any variant of deep ocean. So let's say you're right off the coast of something and it has a very shallow ocean biome, just the standard ocean, like let's say lukewarm ocean, or cold ocean, then the mushroom island could not spawn, only if it's in a deep ocean variant. But something interesting I found that also breaks this trend is the warm ocean. Now the warm ocean does not have a deep variant, although like you can see right here, it is very common that it'll generate very deep down still. So this mushroom island here seems to have generated in the warm ocean, and yet surrounding this mushroom island and this mushroom island we have a different color of water. Well, something very interesting about this is that this color of water is not a different type of ocean, or really not a biome at all, because on our F3 menu you can see this is still the mushroom fields biome. Because mushroom fields only generate as an island, there'll always be some water around them that's still part of that mushroom fields. But if you look at this did generate inside of the warm ocean. And so that's how you find this biome. Now the reason why mushroom islands are actually popular and not just a random biome that most players wouldn't really care about is because of a very unique ability of this biome, and that ability is that the mushroom island, or mushroom fields, whatever you want to call it, is in all practicality a peaceful mode biome. It can be in the middle of the night and there are absolutely no hostile mobs that spawn on this island. It's sort of like a respite from all the hostiles. Basically every block in this island and every block in this biome, so even caves, let's say if we explored down in a cave here, there would be absolutely no mobs that generate in there that are hostile. In fact, the only two mobs that are even able to generate in the mushroom island are the mushrooms, as well as bats deep in the caves. Of course, you could, let's say, get a lush cave underneath here, and then you would maybe get some creepers or skeletons or something else, but generally that doesn't happen. And usually you will have just the mushroom fields in a plain cave, and biomes like the Deep Dark are not actually able to generate underneath the mushroom island. Now of course, being a peaceful mode biome is incredibly overpowered, but something that makes this biome really good for building as well is the fact that the color of grass in this biome is basically the same green as the jungle biome, a color that's of course very sought after. That's why some players have even flattened entire jungles, just so that they can have the grass in, let's say, their city or amusement park or whatever else they're building to be this brilliant green. But in the Mushroom Island you don't really have to do that, and you have right from the get-go this amazing green color. And speaking of colors, the watercolor is also quite good on here. Now it's of course not some sort of neon color, but it's generally your standard water hue. However, if you're on Bedrock Edition, the water here is actually grey, which is sort of odd. I'm not sure if that has something to do with maybe the mycelium being in the water as the idea behind why the water would be grey, but it does certainly make for this biome to have some interesting building patterns in it with that green grass and yet grey water. And in general, the generation of this island is very simple. We simply have mycelium on the ground and somewhat rugged terrain, but really not too much different from, let's say, a plains biome. It is sort of a forest in the fact that we have the tall red mushrooms and brown mushrooms around here, but they're not very dense. Caves can generate here normally, and I found there's often very large openings to caves around this biome, and the only other part of natural generation here is random brown mushrooms on the ground. There are not red mushrooms on the ground here, only the brown ones, and of course the mushroom cow. Now one thing that is unfortunately very annoying about the Mushroom Island is that as of 1.18, you are not able to have your world spawn beyond the Mushroom Island. Now although you technically can set your spawn point to the Mushroom Island, let's say for the entire world spawn by moving where that is, without cheating there is unfortunately no way of having the world spawn be on the Mushroom Island. In fact, if let's say 00 of the world is a Mushroom Island, the spawn point will actually be put somewhere else. Now you might be wondering why, as of course in 1.17 and before, generating on this biome was not very difficult. Well, the reason why is somewhat simple. Mojang decided in 1.18 that players should only spawn in biomes where they could have all the materials to survive off the get-go. So let's say things like trees. But something I find funny about that is the fact that it is definitely still possible to generate in the desert biome at the spawn point, and have your world spawn be right in the middle of the desert, which in my opinion the desert is much more deadly than let's say the Mushroom Island. But either way, that's why you can't generate there. Now of course you can always set your spawn point there with beds, but even though you cannot have your world spawn be there, The Mushroom Island is still incredibly popular to build at, as you can for instance see right here on my Minecraft server, which you can join by joining my Discord server by the way if you're interested. A lot of players have taken this Mushroom Island, taken almost all the mycelium off of it, and transformed it into an area that is green and grassy, and really does have that jungle-like grass color. Even working on this massive mountain in here to make it look a lot less like an alien and sort of strange Mushroom Island, and a lot more like an amazing civilized area. And something sort of interesting about the Mushroom Island as well is that it is the only overworld biome that does not also occur in real life. Now of course yes, there are, let's say, things like the shattered savanna that you wouldn't really have in real life, but the actual biome of the savanna is something in real life. In fact, until the addition of the lush caves in 1.18 and the deep dark in 1.19, it was the only biome in the entire overworld that was not also in real life. And Mooshroom Islands can be from big to small, so for instance here you can see this Mooshroom Island was incredibly large, and they've only begun to transform part of it, and also the mycelium on map shows up as purple. And the generation of the Mushroom Islands was changed somewhat between 1.17 and 1.18. They are incredibly more common in 1.18 and also generally tend to be much larger in 1.18, and so if you're finding many more Mushroom Islands now and also larger ones now, that would be why, as their general generation mechanics have changed a lot and almost always generate very far away from mainland as well. And of course we can't forget about the best part of the mushroom fields, which is the Mooshroom. So for starters, Mooshrooms always generate as red Mooshrooms, however there is a brown variety I will get into later. Now Mooshrooms have more or less the exact same sounds and exact same AI as cows, although they're not just a retextured cow, but you will notice they are bred with wheat like a cow is, and that will give you a baby Mooshroom. Baby Mooshrooms, just like cows, can have their growth sped up by right-clicking on them with wheat, and that'll take off 10% of the remaining growth time per wheat right-clicked on it. And the Mooshroom cows will also follow you around when you're holding wheat. Now something that is interesting is if you breed 2 red Mooshrooms, there is a 1 in 1,024 chance to get a brown Mooshroom as the baby, which of course would, other than the blue axolotl, make the brown Mooshroom more or less the rarest mob in the entire game. However, you can actually get the brown Mooshrooms another way. So if you get yourself a channeling trident and you throw it at a Mooshroom during a thunderstorm, lightning will summon, hitting that cow and turning it brown. But it's not just that it converts it from red to brown. In fact, lightning just converts the cow to whatever it is not right now. Let's say we turn it right now, it'll go from brown to red, although unfortunately it killed the cow right then. You do want to be careful with the damage given to these mobs. But let's say right here, this baby cow here, as it was not damaged by the lightning, you'll notice if it's hit again, it does turn into a red cow again. And you only need to have 1 night of Mooshroom torture, as once you have a brown Mooshroom, you can breed that with a red Mooshroom for a 50-50 chance of either a brown Mooshroom baby or a red Mooshroom baby. Then 2 brown Mooshrooms would always give you a brown Mooshroom baby, just like 2 red would always give you a red one as a baby, except for that very small chance. You can milk brown Mooshrooms or red Mooshrooms for milk with a bucket, which is quite useful, and just like with the cow, you can spam right click on there to get infinite milk with no cooldown. But here's where the Mooshrooms become incredibly overpowered. With just 1 Mooshroom, you have infinite food. That's right, if you take a bowl and right click on the Mooshroom, it'll fill up into a mushroom stew. The mushroom stews are not the best food, and of course they only take 1 brown mushroom and 1 red mushroom to make. But if you consider the fact that you can get absolutely unlimited mushroom stew from the Mooshroom cows, and even once you drink that mushroom stew you can reuse the bowls to get even more. If let's say you bring a single Mooshroom of either the brown or red variety back to your base, and put it in a boat maybe near somewhere that you always are, you could have yourself infinite food that's actually of a fairly good type. Mushroom stew is not the best food source, but what's also interesting, and this is another thing that makes the brown Mooshrooms different, is a special ability of the brown Mooshrooms with the bowl. Well, if we right click on a standard Mooshroom with a flower, nothing happens. But if we go up to a brown Mooshroom with a flower and we right click on it, it'll actually eat that flower. Then if we take a bowl and we milk that Mooshroom after it's eaten the flower, the first thing that we milk out of it is a suspicious stew. The second thing is just a standard mushroom stew. That first suspicious stew will be the corresponding stew from the flower that you gave it. So if we drink that, you can notice we just got regeneration because we used the Oxeye Daisy. Let's say we give it a dandelion and then we milk it. We will get a stew of saturation, which is an incredibly good food source, in fact technically the best food source in the entire game. Although of course it's not stackable. You could kind of make it stackable by having a brown mooshroom around your base, and having a big chest full of the dandelions and bulls. And of course these suspicious stews are basically the only good way of getting potion effects early game, and even late game they're a great way of getting them, as there's even some things like, let's say, the saturation, or even blindness, that are only possible through the suspicious stew. And so next time you have a lightning storm, make sure to turn your red mooshrooms into brown mooshrooms, or really just have a good mix of both, as that brown mushroom's special ability is incredibly overpowered. But there's one interesting thing you can do to mooshrooms, and that is shear them, but it in a sense kills the mooshroom. If we right click on this mooshroom, you can notice it converted into a cow, and it dropped 5 red mushrooms. If we try and shear the brown mooshroom, I'm sure you can guess what happens. It will drop 5 brown mushrooms, and we will have a cow appear there as well. I do find the sound and animation of this to be quite cool. Right clicking on the cow, then sort of an explosion, and it turns into the standard cow from the mooshroom. Now generally this would seem like a waste, but it actually isn't, and it has to do with the fact of the mushroom cow's drops. They're exactly the same as the cows. They will only ever drop steaks and leather. They'll actually never drop mushrooms, which is quite interesting. And so let's say we have a massive amount of the mushroom cows that we're butchering. Maybe we make a massive field of the mushroom cows. Well, after killing all of them, you'll notice we still only have raw beef and leather. All these mushrooms are from shearing them. And so ideally, if you're making a mooshroom farm, what you want to do is you want to get a whole bunch of mooshrooms bred with each other, and then before you butcher them, you want to shear any of the ones that you're going to butcher, then you can kill them, as you'll get the exact same drops from that standard cow as you would from the mooshroom, but you have the addition of those red mushrooms or brown mushrooms, saving the step of having to build a mushroom farm. In fact, there is really no way why after you've found a mushroom cow, you shouldn't have all your farms be with mushroom cows instead of standard cows, as they just have more abilities with the mushroom stew and the mushroom drops, and even the suspicious stew. Now enough about the mushroom cows, on to the mushrooms themselves. Personally, the mechanics around mushrooms are some of my very favorite in the game, and the reason why is that a lot of them are completely unique and have no other features similar to other items in the game. So the first one, for instance, is the fact that you have to plant mushrooms in dark areas. Now granted, it is at the right light level, you can plant these on any solid block. That's right, you do not have to plant mushrooms just on, let's say, dirt, grass, mycelium, podzol, or things like that. For instance, here we're planting mushrooms right on top of these random blocks, and the mushrooms can even spread from these blocks in the right conditions. What are the conditions for mushrooms to grow? Well, if mushrooms are at the right light level, which these ones are of course, so you cannot plant them down. In fact, you can tell where the light level changes, because if I right click, let's say here, I can plant a mushroom, but right here I cannot. Right here I can, right here I can, but right here I cannot. If there are less than 5 mushrooms in a 9 by 9 by 3 radius, so that would be 9 blocks wide, 9 blocks long, and 3 blocks tall. And if there's less than 5 in that radius, then that mushroom can grow if the random tick lands on it. And of course that does make for very slow growth. But let's say you have a massive cave, and you very sparingly put a mushroom here or there within the cave, then eventually from that you could get yourself a very large amount of mushrooms. So it is sort of a strange thing to build a mushroom farm with a very slow spreading technique, but you could do it if you want to make a very authentic mushroom farm in Minecraft, and certainly a very unique way of growing an item in the game. And something you probably just noticed right here is that mushrooms have a light level of 1. That's right, mushrooms are technically a light source, and so if you're ever going through a cave and you happen upon some mushrooms very rarely, you'll notice that those do have that light level. But if you'll notice here too, when I'm planting these red mushrooms, it is only the brown mushrooms that cause this light. The red mushrooms do not, so only those brown mushrooms will give you that light level of 1. Now something you may have noticed is that we cannot, let's say, plant this mushroom on this dirt block right here if it's just right in the middle of the sunlight, but we can plant it on top of this mycelium. So what blocks can you plant mushrooms on when? Well, we already talked about the fact that they can be planted on any single block if the light level is 12 or lower. However, there's only 4 blocks that you can plant mushrooms on at any light level. They're warped and crimson nylium, as well as mycelium and podzol. Now of course podzol, because these generate rather frequently and beautifully in the mega taiga, and of course the mycelium because it's literally mushroom roots, and the nylium because these mushrooms tend to generate a lot in the nether, and also nylium is sort of like the nether mycelium. In fact, I believe that's where the name of nylium came from, is a mixture of nether and mycelium. And there's some other blocks that you can plant mushrooms on too that are a bit different than others. So they can be planted on dirt, coarse dirt, rooted dirt, and grass blocks if it's dark enough, like it is right here. But there's there's a reason why that's different from, let's say, those diamond blocks. If you bone meal a mushroom when it's on any of these dirt type blocks, the grass block, the Nylium, the podzol, or the mycelium, then that can be bone mealed into a giant mushroom. Now of course it has to have the right room, like let's say this mushroom here will grow, but this one will likely not unless it can generate tall enough like that one did, but this one here with blocks above it will just bone meal it and it probably will not grow. And the same with these ones underneath here. So let's say you want to grow a giant mushroom on one of the dirt or grass blocks. What you have to do is you have to make a massive platform in the sky to cause enough darkness so that these can be brightened up, as the light level in the sky is actually always 15 technically, although that is not your visible light level. That is more or less the distance from open sky that there is, and so just be aware not to bone meal mushrooms when they're on invalid blocks. So what do the mushroom blocks do? Well, the mushroom blocks, if you break them, will have a small chance of giving you red mushrooms. You just saw I got a couple right there. So in a nutshell, that's how you grow mushrooms. But what's also interesting is that these blocks can be obtained as is. They're broken the fastest with an axe, so of course a fortune axe you'd assume would be the best block to break these with if you want mushrooms, but that's actually not true, as fortune, interestingly enough, does not apply to the mushrooms, so there's no point of breaking your mushroom blocks with fortune. And you'll notice too when we break these they act a little bit differently than they would as they generate, and these are actually really great decorative blocks, as a lot of people don't use them. So basically how they work is you place them down, and any side that's touched a different block will then turn into this strange sort of plain mushroom texture, and so you can mold which sides have a texture on them and which of them don't. This is definitely a very unique mechanic, but it's cool because it kind of lets you have a maybe sort of wallpaper look on one side and more of a bright and vibrant almost candy red look on the other side. Breaking the mushroom stems will never give you mushrooms, so there's no reason to do anything but break that mushroom stem with your Silk Touch axe. And you can get those blocks if you break with anything with Silk Touch on it, does not have to be an axe. But more or less that's how mushrooms and giant mushrooms work. And giant mushrooms can of course also generate in the dark forest and in the swamp biome if you're in Bedrock edition. Now enough about the mushrooms, what about mycelium? Well, mycelium is a unique and incredibly interesting item that only generates in the Mooshroom Islands. Although you can plant it elsewhere and it'll slowly spread onto nearby dirt, mycelium is unique to this. If you look closely at mycelium and you have your particles on full, there are small little grey dots that'll come off of it, and those particles are meant to represent the fact that this is a spore. Mycelium is sort of like a mushroom root in real life, and so you can see here these are supposed to be the spores of the mushroom coming off of it. And the side of the texture definitely does look something like roots, also sort of spooky, and I've seen people use it in Halloween builds a lot because of that. Now it acts very similarly to grass, and because it's like grass you can only pick it up with Silk Touch. Unfortunately, if you try and break it with your hand, it will only drop dirt. And in a mushroom island, if you break mycelium as dirt and place it back, it will definitely convert back to mycelium very quickly, as mycelium grows basically as quickly as grass does. In fact, it's almost the exact same. And a strange fact about mycelium is that if there is snow on top of it, it looks the exact same as grass when it has snow on top of it. And so let's say you have a snowy area and you want to have mycelium on it, you could always put snow layers on top of there to give it the exact same visual as if it was grass. In fact, without going to your F3 menu, there is no way of knowing that it's not grass. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video about mooshrooms and mushrooms in Minecraft. If you did, make sure to press the like button. Feel free to comment down below if you think mooshrooms are OP in Minecraft. I definitely think they are, and the Mushroom Island in general is one of my favorites. Anyway, I'll see you in the next one, and hopefully you'll have much room to build mushroom builds in the Mushroom Islands.